Welcome to Fridays at 5, everybody. I'm Karen Taylor of the Color Vowel Chart. We're all here of the Color Vowel Chart, here today to talk about podcasts. What are they and how can we get to them when we want to listen to one? So I'd like to hear from the room. What is a podcast in your mind in one sentence that is not complex? I say this because of Dr. Robin Barr.
Oh, yes.
She knows that she could create some kind of recursive sentence where it would be a long description. So we want a non-complex sentence that describes what a podcast is.
I'll say it's a radio broadcast, except recorded on the computer.
Okay, I like that take.
Something you can listen to from the computer, from the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you want.
Anytime you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's asynchronous. It's from a computer of some kind. Anything
And kind
else?
of just an audio file.
Yeah, it's an audio
An
file.
audio file as opposed to an audio file. An audio file. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. An audio file is someone who loves to listen to high fidelity records.
Mhm.
And an audio file would be this podcast. Great. Yeah, that's true. I also think of a podcast.
Like a TED Talk, except no video.
Yes,
No.
and yet a TED Talk has different speakers each time, whereas I believe podcasts have a single host.
Now that I wasn't familiar with that.
That
Yes.
yes and no. I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples. So this one that I'm especially smitten with these days is by, let me get over here for you. I'm still mastering his name as I walk and use my hand. This is the actual episode that I am most fascinated by, but let's go to about for just a minute. And so this is Shankar Vedantam. Shankar Vedantam. I'm working on that. And Shankar Vedantam is brilliant. He hosts this webcast and you just want to listen to him forever. He has a delicious voice. He's super intelligent and he's just down the street in Washington, D.C. and I want to meet him. So I'm just saying that out loud, putting the wish list out there. So he's been running Hidden Brain since 2019 and he has a mixture of stories and research. So he collects people's stories and he pulls on research to explain their journeys from a brain-based perspective. So for example, I listened to one episode today that was about a woman. I mean, I'm still kind of unable to talk about it. It was so like, wow. But this was about a woman, it's the latest episode, who had been raised in an extremely sheltered environment with parents who did not want to ever have emotion in the house. Like peace was about no emotion. And she was basically manipulated into this strange weekend with this man, and it was a fake bride in this. It's called Fake Bride. That's the episode. And so Shankar Vedantam tells the story with her voice because she's told him this story. But then he looks at what the brain can do with respect to denial. Wow. That's the theme, right?
Yeah.
So, and then he pulls on research that's out there and so forth. So that's an example. Then he has another story, so he has
This sounds fascinating. I mean, it's kind of like what I do all the time with consciousness awareness raising. I mean, what you do too, what we do. I don't know
right. And exactly. And part of it is he has the person retell their story if they're available. And he asks certain questions where he says, well, didn't you think about X? And he says, no, it wasn't even a thought to me, that kind of a thing. And then he talks about how that could possibly not be a thought to run away or to say, I am not married to you, which was the case in this story. Fascinating story. So this is the podcast that I'm, as I said, smitten with these days, and you can read more about that. And then, so you can see they have a website,
Okay.
And then this is the particular episode. So right now I can say, this is the one I want everyone to listen to between now and next Friday. And you could go right here to the website and listen, right?
Okay, so you could have a URL and people would click on it.
It's that easy. Okay. And I'm putting it in the chat right now.
Okay.
So that's solved. You could just open up this link on your computer right now, bookmark it, listen to it today, I'm going to be listening to it at least 2 more times, at least in the next week.
Wow.
This one is that fascinating. In this one, he's focusing in on Ian McGilchrist's book, The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World, which again, is it's another fascinating, I mean, it's fascinating. And he does a great job of highlighting it. Other reasons I love Hidden Brain is that he always features music, and he credits it as you see here, and
yeah.
he always features a unsung hero. So you're welcome. Anybody's welcome to call in and leave or send in an audio file of their unsung hero story. And so he's got this very humanistic piece to his show that is a podcast.
Huh.
That is unforgettable. Like, you know, that's his work. And so that's one podcast. As you can see down here, we've got a few podcast tools. You can subscribe if you use Apple, Google, Spotify is another, common way to listen to music these days. My kids use Spotify to pull up themed set lists.
Do these cost money?
Not necessarily. So
'Cause I
Spotify.
I don't subscribe to any of these things, but I don't know what costs money and what doesn't cost money.
Well, what I did, and what's not here at all, is I just went to my app store and downloaded a podcast reader or a podcast tool. And so I'm using Overcast. That's my, mine's called Overcast. And it's one of the first ones that shows up in the app store, and it's free. And so I now have my 3, and I can sort of show you here. I've got my 3 podcasts that I like to listen to in my app. So let's call it a shell. That's what this app tool is. It's not very fancy.
Karen has a question.
Sure. Hi, Karen.
I was just waiting for her to finish. I have an Android, and so I'm just looking right now on Google Play, and there's several different podcast players. Does it matter which one I use?
I don't think so. Just look at the ratings.
Okay.
That I use. I just being clear in the chat there. And so you look at the ratings, and I picked the one that had a bunch of ratings that were all in the 5s or 4s, right? And that's pretty much, I try not to overthink which version of a given very basic.
I guess I could try it, and if it doesn't work, I'll find a new one.
Yeah. And then when I went in there, they were like, what apps do you want to load? Exactly. Good. Now, do you have a Android or an iPhone?
The iPhone.
iPhone.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it right there.
Okay.
And so as
Arrogant.
soon as I loaded it and opened it, it said, what do you like? And I already know that I like Hidden Brain. I know I love This American Life. It's my second show. Now you're going to love This American Life. It is the best. It's wonderful. And then Radiolab is my other favorite for so many.
Radiolab has some good stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And there are lots of others. There's one other, if you love storytelling, The Moth is phenomenal. They slay me with their stories. And they're kind of like spoken word. I mean, these are people who really know how to tell a story and tell lots of them, right?
There's some radio programs that I like to listen to, but I don't know if they're on podcast, but I think like Terry Gross's Fresh Air, that might be on podcast.
Right.
I don't know how to find out.
Exactly. So that's what it
Or
comes.
Kojo Nandi might have it, because I was on his show for something and I can still access it on the computer. So I guess that's a podcast.
Precisely. So, here's, for example, I just looked up Fresh Air podcast, and there it is. And so you can pull that up. I think it's basically radio's way of surviving, right? That they have radio shows within a radio program. And they know that people can't listen live all the time. And they also don't want people to have to be tied to their computer to pull it up and listen to it. So I could listen to this right now. But what if I want to do something while I listen? Like drive, or in my case, these days, walk. That's what I do, is I walk. And so that's kind of the second piece I want to come to, is the brilliance of having it on your phone is that you can do something that helps you be an even better listener than just staring at your computer. Like, when can I leave the room? I just get so impatient.
Yeah.
And if I listen to it while doing something else, I tune out. If I try to clean my office while listening,
Right, you can't
that doesn't
read
work
and
for
do
me.
and listen at the same time. Yeah.
Right. And what I find is that when I'm walking, I am an amazing listener. Like, everything lights up in my brain, and that's
Mhm.
me. So I know that walking and listening is fantastic for me.
Do you
For
have
idea generation.
earphones or something?
In fact, I just came back from a walk. I use headphones. I have a pocket in my pants, and I just put them right in there. My daughter stole the fancy ones that don't have cables, right? That just ear pods or whatever they are. So I don't use those.
Mm.
It's connected. That's fine. And so I could see it being walking or driving. Any other ideas about what you could do while listening, that something that you takes a while to do, that doesn't
Well,
involve?
I listen to a whole lot of music on YouTube all the time, and while I play solitaire,
There we
because
go.
I can't stand the music that they have on the video games in the background. So I listen to Tchaikovsky instead or something.
So you could listen to a podcast while playing solitaire.
Possibly, I think only if it's if it uses a different part of the brain, maybe. So
Right.
a card game would probably be okay. Something that involved, I don't know, reading clues or something might not work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think solitaire might be perfect because it's so color, it's pattern based. and
Yeah,
so
because
forth.
it's totally different things going on. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And
I'll let you
since,
know.
and since I know you have a phone, you also could have two devices doing, you don't have to play it at the same time as a solitaire on the computer. It could be on your
Right.
phone.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's neat. That's neat. Good. Yeah, so we now know we can find them online. We can find them on our phone with an app. Have you been successful, Karen, downloading an app for?
Yeah,
Podcast?
I put in Hidden Brain and This American Life and added them,
Yay.
but I'm not sure. Let me see if I can figure out how to get to it now.
Yeah, the
Let's see.
episode of Hidden Brain that you'll want.
Mhm.
And it was really just, gosh, how did I come across that? I don't even know how I came across it. Isn't that funny? But I felt really lucky. That's what I felt, that I listened to that.
Yeah.
Because it's been exciting lately in my head. I've had fun in my head lately. So
So if you subscribe to a podcast, does that just mean you listen to them in order, or what does
yeah,
it
it means
mean?
that each time you open up your app tool, you get the latest one. So when I
Okay.
first loaded it up, it gave me just the most recent Hidden Brain, This American Life, Radio Lab. And now when I open it up, I open up Hidden Brain, and it has, all. Okay, good. So it shows all of you can see it in a lot of different ways, but it'll
Right,
show
okay.
you on one screen the two most recent. All you can look at unplayed ones so that you're not missing any of them if you're trying to fill in all the history.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's great. Yeah, so this one is under, if you look under all, Karen, under Hidden Brain.
I don't have, mine doesn't say all. This,
So there should
this
be
particular
these
app
three
doesn't say
tabs.
it.
No?
Mine says Q. Let's see here. Subscribed. I don't know. Unplayed. I'm just gonna mess around with it. I
Hit
think.
unplayed. Go to unplayed.
Yeah, I am, but it's nothing that I downloaded.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of weird, but I'll figure it out.
Okay. So yeah, one head, two brains. That's the name of
Okay.
the particular one.
Yeah.
It made me think about so many things with respect to language teaching in general, as well as color vowel approach in particular, and then about our society. It gets a lot into the tropes of left brain, right brain.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But then gets into where our society has recently in trending toward some very left brain attitudes about things, and that we really need the right brain. And I'm not going to give any more away.
Well,
yeah,
this is before your time, Karen, but I remember this would be, I guess, the late 70s. The left brain was called The Left Side of the Brain, which has the math and language intelligences in it. That was the best one, because that's the one you use for school, and everybody said, well, this is so men score higher on these things than women, and so forth. And then right about 1980, people discovered that in fact women turned out to be better at left brain things than men, and that men tended to skew towards the right brain spatial stuff. And suddenly the right brain became fashionable. And I just had to laugh, because as soon as the left brain became something that women did, then it was no longer the dominant hemisphere. And suddenly the right brain became very trendy for
I remember that there was the
from
book.
the late 80s on.
Yeah, there was the art book called Drawing with the Right Side of the Brain.
Now that is an actually very good book. That is a fine book that is actually based on science. So I recommend that to people. I suggested in my classes, if you want to know
Drawing
more
with the
about
right.
Yeah.
so yeah, no, that's a good book.
Yeah. And so what I'd love, we won't delve
Remember the
into the
name.
actual content too much, but one thing
Betty
he
Edwards.
says,
Betty Edwards is the author.
there we go. Thank you.
And I actually even did all the exercises in the book. So you turn a picture upside down in order to copy it, and things like that. So of a face, yeah.
And I've in fact
It
my
was
kids
it
are
was very, very instructive, because you can feel your brain shifting from one side to the other. It was like calisthenics. It was just really bizarre, kind of like what we do in when we're chanting,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah,
Wh-
well, that's
you
exactly the
chant-
motion you used recently to describe your
Yeah.
experience in there.
Mhm.
So great. And Karen, I don't know if you've been recently, we have this Thursday night event twice a month called Pure English Practice.
Okay.
And it's at 10 p.m. Eastern, so it's
Oh.
late. But I also post it to our YouTube channel
Okay.
when I have when I've led a show that I feel good about. I'm a little funny about that, but I'm getting better and better at being basically like a show host. It's a little different than teaching. And
Okay.
yet I'm going between hosting a show and teaching at the same time, and I'm still figuring out what that feels like.
Okay.
But I highly recommend it. It's an opportunity to do all right brain speech
Okay.
in ways that are kind of, I don't know, compelling. Good. So anyway, he says one thing that I think is good food for thought as we wrap up is he says this is through the research of this Ian McClellan, that
Oh yeah,
it's
I
not
know
that,
about McClellan.
yeah, it's not that the left brain does this and the right brain does that. It's that these two brains process experience and information in very different ways. And you need both of them to be, a fully functioning problem solving human in a way. And then he talks about a lot about stroke research and what
Right.
happens, or maybe when you cut the corpus callosum and
Yeah, the
all these
split brain
seizures,
patients,
this
Gazzaniga
kind
and
of thing.
Sperry. Yeah.
That what happens is you end up with some very interesting outcomes when you ask somebody a question. And so I'll leave it at that, because it's so.
Yeah.
But I
it's
think
fascinating stuff.
it is. And so I was talking with somebody about, I just want a book club around this. I want to do a book club around podcasts, and whoever it is will remind me who they are. But they said, oh, that's a thing. It's called a Pod Squad.
I never heard that before. That's cool.
And so that's, you're going to see, I'm going to try to embrace that.
Pod Squad. All right. So we're going to be a Color Vowel Pod Squad.
Color Vowel Pod Squad, which is great, because I think we have lots of opportunities for sharing ideas, but sometimes we need new ideas to bring into what we think about when we teach. And so Pod Squads, I think, will be a great way to go. And I think Hidden Brain's going to provide us with a lot. And we'll just kind of take it, maybe one meeting per month dedicated to a podcast of some kind.
I think that sounds like great fun. And a
Yeah.
lot of this is stuff that I teach, but it's boring just to listen to me lecture about it. This sounds
Right.
much more interesting. So you could if I assigned people to listen to a podcast, then they would be, it might be better than having them do the reading in the textbook, for example.
It could, it could. I
Yeah.
think people like, I still am learning his name. It's just, hold on. People like Shankar Vedantam, who are just very good storytellers. You know, they've got the right voice. They know what to tell when. And so they're adding that to research by others.
And they also bring
very
in
powerful.
quotes and sound bites from other things.
And they mix it with music, which itself, it makes it a very brain-based experience. I mean, you just, your brain is so happy hearing these, like you said, sound effects and the way they use music. It's been very
Neat.
thoughtfully done. So, yeah,
Okay.
Okay,
great.
so next week we're talking about this
We are.
two brains inside one head. Is that one head?
We
two
are,
brains?
we
Is that what it
are.
was?
Exactly.
cool.
A couple of other things I thought I would highlight that are coming up. One is just to mention that today and tomorrow are the last days to register for the Pronunciation Second Language Learning and Teaching Conference that is usually only a physical conference. So this is an online version of this annual PSLLT. It's a mouthful, but it's a good conference. And more interestingly, and this is mentioned in our Color Val community, but I'm going to grab it for those who listen to this who aren't in the community, the PSLLT, Brock University. Today's the last day to register with a discount, the early bird, and they have a special rate that is, putting it here in the chat, that is just for those of us that want to attend only the practical teaching tips sessions. So, you know, it's primarily a research conference of academics who do action research and quantitative and qualitative research. So they report on their research, but then there's also, as you go into the PSLLT registration, this teaching tips, early bird pricing. This is what you might want if you're really looking for practical. And it'll be all kinds of teaching of pronunciation, not just English. You'll have academics who are themselves Polish who specialize in the teaching of Spanish pronunciation. I mean, you never know, because it's a whole group of people who care about phonology, pedagogy, you know, etc. And so it's a great cross, what do you call it? Like an intersection of all kinds of directions of language learning. So this is the one that I happen to use just because my time is limited and I'd love to go to the full conference, but I'm going to do the teaching tips. So that's May 15th is the last day for that pricing. It's not too much more to go up to, you know, regular pricing, but that's on mid-June, June 18th and 19th is the conference. So just mentioning that. That falls on a Friday at 5. And so we might dedicate a Friday to 5 at reporting out for those of us that go, sharing what we learned. A great way to learn ourselves, right? It's just to report on what we learned. So that's one thing. I'm going to ask Jennifer, since I know she's here, if there's anything else we want to highlight before we sign off for the day. Next week is Pure Practice. We will do that.
When's Ask a Linguist?
Ask a Linguist is a week from today. Thank you very much for reminding me.
It's next week, a week from today?
Fourth Fridays.
It's the
Indeed.
28th, the 28th of May.
Oh, I'm sorry, not next Friday, because thank you. Next Friday is Hidden Brain. The one after that is Ask the Linguist. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Fourth Fridays.
Fourth Fridays.
Fourth Friday.
Yeah.
There's
And then sometime in June, we'll be rescheduling the one we had to cancel on Looking Good when you're Zooming. So,
yeah, I'm putting that together now for June, and we're putting together a little panel of people who have some expertise in this. I'm excited. I've gotten some nice responses already. So won't count on just one of us.
You
My
know,
husband took
what
a
you could do
peek
is
at
you could have it like one of those makeover shows and pick somebody who has a really, really bad, like, you know, pick me, and then, you know,
go get your lamp.
Give me advice. And then the next week you'll see me all, you know, dialed up.
That's great.
a tea tray in front of you, a green screen behind you, and a light, and you've got it. So
I'll say
My husband looked at my Zoom. He took a peek when I was waiting in Zoom earlier today, and he said, "You look really good." And I said, I'm using the enhance your appearance feature." And he said, "You're kidding." I said, "No,
There's an
my
enhance your
skin look-
appearance feature?
Yes,
Really?
it evens
is.
out your skin tone. It's wonderful."
Oh, here. Okay, so let's just do that one because it's so much fun. Go to your video icon and on the bottom left of your
Okay.
screen, click on the little
Touch up my
arrow.
appearance. Oh my gosh, that didn't used to be there.
Oh, it's been there a while.
Huh.
You know, somebody like now doesn't need it. Now it's
Now
just
watch, I've just
beautiful
touched
anyway.
up my appearance a lot. I put it to the max and you can kind of see it's like super blurry.
Wow, look at me. That's cool.
And then,
Isn't that nice? It's sort
look
of
at-
like
look
the 1960s romantic filter, you know, when they went to the love interest and she was kind of blurry.
Oh yeah, you
Right.
put
The
you
Blanche
put Vaseline
Dubois.
on the lens or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yes.
Blanche Dubois. So yeah, I mean, it really does show like everything that, Blotchy does. So I just kind of put it in the middle and then things look a
I
little
didn't know
better.
you could do that. This is awesome.
Yeah, I mean that looks really good, Robin. That really helps. Yeah.
Yeah, it really made a difference.
And then some fancy versions give you eyebrows if you feel like your eyebrows aren't put on correctly. And I actually had a gentleman who was a Blue Canoe user, working with me as a tutee, and we wanted to publish these videos, but he didn't want his identity to be very clear, so he put on a mustache and eyebrows, and he felt like, and glasses, and he felt like, but all Zoom. I mean, it was
Yeah,
Zoom,
yeah.
and he felt that was good enough to be recorded publicly, like
Sounds
like
like
now.
Groucho Marx. Oh, that's cute. No.
That's
Put on
excellent.
a hat now. Put on a hat.
It's really good. Good, everybody. Well,
That is
anything
really
else?
neat. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
we've
Other
already
than that,
That's cute.
just hopefully we'll get a really, good newsletter out this month.
We're just waiting for the fairies to come and do it.
I know.
The
And it-
newsletter elves.
Oh,
yeah.
and now I'm going to be look for an email from me now in the next 24 hours. I'll be sending you an email.
I was like, okay. You're like, okay, I will. I will also say, I know, in terms of Blue Canoe, our Free for Schools summer program is almost ready to go. So if you
Oh, it is good. We are going to have one for
are going
summer.
to do that, yeah,
Okay.
just
So
to
I
know.
lied to somebody today.
yeah. So we'll be offering Free for Schools for summer, and that's a good idea. That's about it for now. Just want to thank you for coming. I hope
Thank
this has
you.
been helpful, and you now have your podcast. And Karen, you have your
Yes.
pod reader. A couple of
I
ideas
have my
there.
enhanced face.
You have your enhanced face. All right. Well, have a great afternoon, everybody. Good morning now.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great
Good
weekend.
to see everybody.
Thank you.